Pyramid scheme scammer ends up paying in the end. About 6 or 7 years ago, I was trying to enlist into the military. I ended up not joining, but that's a story for another time. At this point, I was led to believe I was about 4 months away from leaving for boot camp. I was running out of savings, and needing a part-time job for some spending cash while I waited around. So I did what any enterprising 20-something would do, and searched Craigslist for jobs. I normally hate sales jobs, especially those based on commissions, but figured it would be a great way to earn some extra cash short-term. Found a few job listings that looked promising, and put out some applications. A few days later I received a call from David. He was opening up a new store and needed associates. He liked my resume and asked if I'd be available for an interview on Friday morning. I was very upfront with him, and let him know that the distance was a bit more than I'd normally drive for a retail job, and asked what he was offering for an hourly rate, to see if it was worth the drive. He told me that they were planning on offering an hourly rate in the mid-teens, along with commission. Seemed like an okay deal, so I agreed to be there Friday at 8 a.m. Friday arrives as a cold, rainy day. I wear a nice shirt and tie, and drive in heavy traffic to the address David provided. I knew the area from a previous job, and eventually found the strip mall I was looking for. However, I'm not seeing any signage for the company name that was listed. There is, however, one empty space with no signage and 2 people inside. Okay, maybe they haven't gotten the store set up yet. No big deal. I had arrived early, knowing how bad traffic can be in that area. While in my car, I witnessed a young lady in business casual dress remove a sign from the window stating retail space for rent. Call 1800 blah blah. Okay, a little weird, but maybe it's the first day in the space. I walk in about 5 minutes early, and immediately my BS meter goes from yellow to the highest level, black watch plaid. The tables are all simple plastic folding tables. The kind college kids would buy for beer pong while on a shopping trip to Target. The walls are plastered with laminated charts featuring tons of dollar signs, smiling faces from stock photos, and an organizational chart showing an all-too-familiar shape. A pyramid. God damn it. Alright, might as well have fun for a while to wait out traffic going home. The young lady in the dress approaches me, introducing herself as Cindy. She welcomed me to company name, and asked me to have a seat. She sat at her desk, another plastic table, and pretended to go through paperwork. However, she was really just shuffling papers around. We get to chatting, and I ask her how long she's worked for David. She says she's been his secretary for about 6 months and that I'm going to love it here. Eventually, a guy walks out of the back office. Early 30s, clean cut, wearing an ill-fitting suit from JCPenney's. As he is walking over, all smiles, Cindy says, "Oh, Dennis. Our newest recruit is here." The guy stops in his tracks and gives her a cold stare. "It's David, Cindy. We've been over this." He turns back to me and gives me his brightest hard to find good help these days smile. David sits me down and welcomes me, saying they are going to start with a group interview and has me sit down in a circle of chairs. Eventually more people come in and sit down. David gets up and begins to thank us all for coming. He tells us about an exciting new opportunity from Cutco. He pulls out a set of knives, and explains how with his company we can make as much money as we want, all while setting our own hours. He even pulls out a textbook, saying about how this company's revolutionary tactics have even been featured in college textbooks. He opened to a page, his hand covering parts of it, making sure we can all clearly see the words Cutco in large letters on the page. Sad to say, a lot of the other interviewees were very impressed by this. One pregnant girl seemed very excited that she could work around her pregnancy and upcoming birth. David was going on and on about how much money he's made and how hard workers will rise to the top quickly. At this point, David said he needed to take a quick phone call, and gave us 5 minutes to have some coffee, chit-chat, whatever. As he stepped away, he left his college textbook behind. Oops. So I pick it up, find the earmarked page, and read. As I thought, it was all about pyramid schemes and it had Cutco as one of the largest examples. It goes on to talk about how these are essentially scams, not economically viable, etc., so I decide to share this all with the group. I explain how pyramid schemes work, and how he's just scamming us. They seemed incredulous, so I said when David gets back, to ask them about what we need to pay to get started. That finally got everyone to realize what was going on. David walks in a few minutes later, and one of the girls in the group asked David what we need to get started. Well, all you need is your first set of knives to demonstrate. You can sell that on directly or have them order one and keep that as your demo kit. Doesn't matter. Just have to pay the startup fees for it, and that's when all hell broke loose. One kid started to get up and tell him to go F himself, saying he's wasting our time and he's an asshole for trying to pull this shit. The pregnant girl is crying because she thought she found a place that would allow her to work despite being pregnant. David is clearly confused and flustered, and asking who told them all this. When it becomes apparent I'm the wrench in the machine, David gets upset and starts telling me to leave. People are yelling at David, David is yelling at me, Cindy is trying to tell everyone she never met David before today and didn't know what this bullshit was. Eventually we all walk out leaving David behind. As I'm walking to the door, I see, leaning against the wall, the sign that was in the window before retail space for rent. Call 1800 blah blah. As I get into my car I dial the number. Eventually I get through to a person, and ask about the property for rent at the location of David's company. The nice lady on the phone apologized, saying they had just leased the property out. I asked if she knew how long the lease was for, as I was really interested in the property. She said she wasn't sure, they hadn't done the official paperwork yet. They were on their way to the space to sign everything with the leaseholder in a few hours. I told her everything that had just happened to me, and about David using the space for a pyramid scheme. She got extremely upset, saying that this stuff happens all the time in the industry. They will go to sign and last minute the leaseholder will decide to opt out, after using it for some fly-by-night operation. She thanked me for the info, and I thought that was the end of that. Or so I thought. A few weeks later, I received an email from David, telling me how I ruined his life. About how the property management found out what was going on, and weren't refunding his down payment on the space. Saying he violated a clause in the paperwork he signed to hold the property. How he knew I was the one who called because I'm a terrible human being, etc. etc. Now he was out thousands for the space and supplies, how he only wanted to give us jobs and help us. It was a long, very angry email, with several things said about me and my mother. So I called 1800 blah blah again, spoke with the same lady I did before, and she was very interested in an email from David where he essentially admitted to what he was trying to do. Said it would help them all in the legal proceedings. And don't you know I was more than happy to send that email along to her. Her lawyer said it should be an open and shut case at that point. I like to think I'm a helper. Ex cheated on me and falsely accused me of assault, so I exposed her to everyone she knew. In late May 2016, I asked my crush, Kate, of 3 years out on a coffee date. 3 dates later, we made things official. For the next 7 months, our relationship felt too good to be true. We clicked on so many interests, so we hardly ever disagreed on anything. We were very open with each other, which led to an incredible intercourse life. We both had good jobs so we had money to spoil one another, and our families were both enthusiastic about our relationship. In January 2017, I was accepted into my country's Armed Forces Reserve program as a combat engineer. I underwent basic training from February to late April, and was up until then the hardest thing I had ever done. There were several times I thought I wouldn't graduate, and the only thing that kept me going was Kate's words of encouragement over texts and calls. She was there when I received my BTC certificate, and never let me forget how proud she was of me. As part of my job in the reserves, I would have to go away in the summer for advanced training, between early June to late August. Kate fully supported me going 400 kilometers away to the training center and spending almost our entire summer break on work to further my military career. The summer was brutal on me. I was a social outcast from every clique that formed on our course, and was the butt of several jokes. My self-esteem plummeted through the floor, but Kate's belief in me was what made me prevail. I passed as 5th best on course, and I owed it all to her. The decline. Things between us started to sour after returning home. According to her, I wasn't as spontaneous and outgoing as before I went away. I was dismissive, took small jabs and jokes as personal insults, and would rather stay in, watch movies, and have intercourse instead of going out. Unbeknownst to both of us, I had developed some nasty social anxiety due to the events of the summer, and it started affecting our relationship. Nearing our 2-year anniversary in 2018, we got into a heated argument over a small misunderstanding, and subsequently broke up. I was incredibly distraught, before she texted me 3 days later and said she wanted to try and fix things. I didn't see her for 3 weeks, but we kept in touch every day, slowly mending things. When we officially got back together, nothing felt the same. Every time I talked with her, it was if I was walking on eggshells, and it only worsened my anxiety, which in turn hurt our already damaged relationship. Then things finally came to a head at the end of July. The hurt while in school, Kate had met a dude named John. She saw in John what she used to see in me, and they quickly became very close friends. He consoled her through our breakup and every little time I messed up afterwards. For the record, I knew of John, but never thought Kate would ever do anything with him. One night after work, we had planned for me to stay the night at Kate's place. I arrived to see the two of them chilling on the living room couch. Kate said that John had dropped by for a spontaneous visit, and he was just leaving. After John left, she became cold and distant. I slowly accepted that our relationship was dead, and asked her how things were between us. She echoed my thoughts, and we agreed to break up the next day. She said I could stay the night one last time, seeing how it was late and she was still worryful of me. From there on until she fell asleep, Kate became uncharacteristically glued to and protective of her phone. In the past, she wouldn't care if I had glanced over to catch her and her friends texting about whatever, but now she did her best to hide the screen from me. I asked her about it, and she said it was private stuff, which only raised more questions. After she fell asleep, curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked her phone, I knew her passcode, and found hundreds of messages between her and John. Messages about how she was now single, how exciting it was that they could now be a couple in public, and laughing at me about every little thing I did. I quietly sobbed as I read through each hurtful text. My crying wasn't as quiet as I thought. Kate stirred, and once she realized what I was doing, she threw a fit. I couldn't find the anger or words to combat her, so I just grabbed my stuff and left, with Kate shouting and yelling at me the whole time. It was late in the morning when I got home. I just broke down and ugly cried all night. I called in sick from work the next day, and spent it sulking in my bed. The day after, I got several angry texts from Kate's friends and family. In a bid to save her image and denounce anything I might say about her, she told anyone she knew that I had forced myself upon her that night in one last attempt to get some before we broke up, and left after the deed was done. Though what I had done was scarring, she refused to press charges because she didn't want to make a circus of her life in court and was the bigger person by doing so. I spent the next few months in fear that her allegation would have me discharged from the army and my image forever tarnished, but nothing ever happened. The revenge 5 months afterwards, Kate and me. After pleasantries, she basically apologized for the whole thing, and actually admitted to faking it, though she would never publicly admit it to save her own reputation. My image, be damned. This angered me, but I kept cool. I screenshot the texts and continued talking with her. Over the next 3 months, she entered into a cycle of events as follows: complain about a current life situation, usually about John screwing up in their relationship in one way or another, and asking for advice, lamenting our relationship, how I never screwed up like John did, how she wished we could go back to the way things were, blah blah blah, ignoring me because John finally pulled his head out of his ass, did some huge romantic gesture, and saved their relationship, going on a smear campaign on social media about our relationship, employing her friends for help, knowing in full that I would see it all, and trying to bait me into an argument. It would work, she would try to turn the argument around and paint me as the bad guy, and then block me for about a month, before repeating the cycle. This happened 3 times like clockwork, and always left me burnt out and broken, but a part of me wanted it to happen. Each time it did, I took screenshots of every damning thing she said. I had a full SD card of everything I compiled before I finally decided it was time. Making several picture copies of the worst text messages I caught, I bought several manila envelopes and mailed them to everyone I thought would matter to Kate, her parents, grandparents, extended family she was super close with, best friends, work boss, co-workers, teachers, whoever I could find a mailing address for. I made sure that anyone getting the envelope would know that the texts were between me and Kate, and sent them off. Within 3 weeks, I got results. Some of the people who messaged me to shame and insult me before now apologized for their words. My favorite was from her own parents, who went on to say that they were deeply sorry about their daughter's behavior, how they raised her to be better than how she acted, and to please not pursue any legal actions. The thought had crossed my mind, but I didn't have the money nor the mental fortitude to fight a legal battle. I told them I'd think about it, and that they'd be the first to know besides Kate if I did. Kate sent me some texts as well, with things like, how could you betray my trust like that, or you ruined my life, you bastard. I didn't reply, I just read every angry text that flew in with a satisfied grin and then blocked her when they stopped. I never fully found out how badly her life was affected by my revenge, but I do know that she dropped out of school and no longer has a job. I hope John was worth it. Destroy my childhood, ruin my chance at college, and laugh when I said I was homeless? Lol, cool, I'll ruin your effing life. My mother was a really shitty person. I have 4 other siblings. 1 older sister, 3 way younger, 3 different dads. Before I was born, I'm a male by the way, my oldest sister was taken away from my mother when she was a few months old because she tried to slice the father of my sister while he was holding her. She lost custody and the dude left her. Older sister goes to live with her father's family in a different city. Cute lil ol me coming into this pretty world. My dad went to jail 2 to 3 years after I was born for a while, I rarely saw him. He's an alcoholic if that matters. She was a single mother but she made it work and she worked hard. One of the bigger problems was that she took out all her aggression and hatred of my father on me as well as work stress and etc. She dealt with assault growing up, which I'm sure definitely affected her relationships and how she treated me as well. Anyways. Cue me being abused from the age of 4 to 5 to about 17. Every day was hell. She was extremely strict and her perspective was warped. She was also pretty big in stature and had a lot of strength. Examples of her being shitty: I've gotten beaten up badly once because her room was dirty. The dishes weren't washed and I got beaten soon as I got home, even if there weren't dishes when I left to school. If I walked too loud, it'd get my ass beat. She broke my nose for looking at her the wrong way on my 10th birthday when she brought me a cake I was allergic to. It had peanuts. She knows I'm slightly allergic but feigned ignorance. It was more or less every day or every other day. She used her fists / elbows / extension cords / hangers / chairs / canes / bats / etc. Whatever she could find I was getting beaten with. I could never escape to my room for long because she would always call me every few minutes to get her things or to yell at me. She never drank or did substances or anything. Whenever she was upset and I happened to be in front of her, she'd kick me down the stairs to make me hurry up. She's put a knife to my neck before and had to be forcibly stopped by her BF of the time. Burned my Christmas presents from other people. She didn't get me anything that year, and just other really shitty things. The only thing I will say, she tried really hard to make up for it with video games and electronics and etc. It didn't make a difference to me though, it never helped. She controlled most aspects of my life. I got by with little petty revenges. Peeing in the Lipton iced tea she drank. Rubbing her forks and spoons between NY butt cheeks before I served her dinner. Ignoring her screams for help when she had kidney stones. How TF am I supposed to help anyways? But by the time I got to high school I turned to alcohol. I resented her and the negative atmosphere affected who I was as a person. I started to be cold and uncaring. Calculated. She started kicking me out every few months, telling me to find somewhere else to live by age 15. She sent me away to a different country for a year and tried to keep my passport, but I made it back to the US with the help of the embassy and my stepfather. She'd already left by that time and found some other dude. I came back senior year with no credits for the prior grade, which ended with me getting a GED. I spent most of the time I could with my best friend and started working shitty jobs. I was terrible at saving as I had accumulated loads of shitty habits while growing up, so it didn't make much difference. She eventually told me that if I went to college, I would always have a place to live until I finished. Cue my first 2 semesters at a 2-year college, I maintained a 3.7-ish GPA. My teachers loved me and it was my escape. Towards the end of my second semester during finals, I came home late one night around 10 p.m. and my mother yanks the door open screaming in my face asking when I'll move out. I'm slightly intoxicated and decide to completely ignore her and walk to my room. If I opened my mouth, that day would be the day I blew up and cursed her out. I've rarely ever raised my voice at her because it never ended well. Now at this point I'm 19 and I've been doing school full-time with no savings. I'm also fairly fit and could easily take my mom at this point, never laid a hand on her or any woman. I hate violence. I get to my room, she rips my door open, and starts yelling. I say nothing and stare at her. She walks away and called the police on me saying she thought it'd end her and my younger siblings. I don't know where the F she got that idea from, as she's the one who's nearly ended me many times. I packed everything into a duffel bag and left 5 minutes afterwards. I failed all of my finals because I couldn't make it to my school. Things kinda spiraled and the next 2 to 3 years were me on and off homeless. I survived the best I could in a big city with no college degree and made a lot of shitty choices due to my shitty habits. Eventually I found a profitable hobby that gave me meaning, and through that I started to work my way up. Got my own apartment, had a full-time job, and did my hobby on the side. I hadn't kept up contact with my mother at all, but my younger sister, who was old enough to have a phone, found me on social media, so I saw photos and such. She didn't have it anywhere near as bad, but she did get beaten occasionally. My mother reached out via email, all smiles, asking how I've been. Now guys, I've always been envious of the relationship most PPL have with their moms, so I gave her a chance and gave her a call. We talked for a few minutes and everything was civil and seemed like things would go okay, but then she asked me what I've been up to the last few years, and I told her honestly that I was homeless for a while and struggled a lot after what she did to me, but I worked my way out of it. She literally laughs. She laughed for a few seconds in a very condescending kind of chuckle and then said, "I never did a thing to you, so you don't know what abuse is. It's your own damn fault you were homeless. So how about yo?" But by that point I hung up. I was speechless and fuming. I don't know what abuse is? Okay, beach. I've spent 2 long letting you destroy my sanity. Now is the time. There was a few things my mother didn't know. 1. I knew for a fact that current well-paying job she had was gotten on lies, as she never got her college degree and lied about it on her resume. 2. I had access to all of her email accounts and cloud storage accounts since I was the one that set them up when I was younger, and she never changes her passwords. Lastly, she definitely wasn't aware that from 13 years old and on to the last time she hit me, I took photos of all my bruises / marks / wounds / bloody noses, saving them to my computer and then Google Drive. On top of that, my little sister had been sending me photos via social media of the bruises she got from my mom. The first thing I did was compile all of those photos / videos into one folder. I then reached out to CPS in my city and explained that my siblings were being abused, how I was abused in the past, and that I had mountains of proof. Since I've called the cops on my mother before and the thing that happened with my older sister, there was immediately a home visit. They arrived almost a day later with the police, and coincidentally my mother was literally in the process of beating my younger sister when they were knocking. Cue an emergency removal of all my siblings from the house and my mother getting arrested, though she was released hours later. I was getting a day-to-day play-by-play because my mother's best friend is a blabbermouth, and everything my mother said she told her son, who relayed it to me without either of their knowledge. I sent CPS all the evidence and there's a legit case against my mother now. The next day I emailed and then called up her job to inform them that she had lied about having a very necessary college degree, as well current events in her life, which sparked a background check. She was fired days later. Say adios to $75K and a blacklist in the only industry you know how to work. I then spitefully deleted every cloud account and email address I ever made for her, which was all of them, which I'm sure will make keeping up with a lot bills and etc. nearly impossible. I then anonymously reported her to the IRS because of the tax fraud she committed for years by claiming people's children that weren't hers with a lot of detailed information, since I lived with her while she did it. So now, my mother lost all her kids and her job. I'm meeting with a caseworker from CPS next week to talk more about what happens moving forward, but I do know they're not going back. I'd cow she's gonna pay her mortgage now and survive. I'm sure she's gonna get a call from the IRS who will be looking for a few $1,000s she owes them. She also has to go back to court in a few months, not exactly sure what she was charged with, but I'll update when I find out how everything turns out.